how important is this to you really? Because is this about actually I need to make more money, find more money, or cut our cloth in a different way that allows us to do those things?
The question is from Thinking Focus.
Hi, I'm Graham.
Hi, I'm Ricky.
And the question is, how do I find my purpose in life? This mini-series of the question is, we're exploring topics that come up when we're coaching. And we're going to share some thoughts and insights from our experiences. So we're going to look at when we're faced with this kind of question when we're coaching, how we might respond. So, Ricky, let's kind of kick this off. How often do you find people asking this kind of question in your coaching sessions?
You know what? It's kind of a lot. It's all the time. People are kind of trying to work out, where do I fit in all of this? What does that mean for me? I mean, I kind of find myself asking that question a lot as well. You know, when you've got a family and you're trying to balance work and you're trying to do that, you go, how does this all piece together? And I think this is why the how do I find my purpose question comes up a lot, particularly your life element of this. The work becomes a little bit easier, not easy, but easier.
Yes, yeah.
And I think, and I know you and Paul have discussed that in another podcast. So that one's definitely worth tuning into. But I think this comes down to, where do you get your mojo from?
Yeah, and you're right. When we talked about in the previous podcast, when we talked about the work aspect, I think often when we're coaching, it's the work aspect that comes out first of all. People talk about kind of lacking motivation typically in their job or kind of with the place that they work, but often you find that then opens up to this bigger question of where work fits with everything else, and knowing the stuff that motivates us, and probably also thinking about the stuff that doesn't motivate us is equally important. Can be a trigger, I think, sometimes for a much larger conversation.
Well, I think that's absolutely right. I think you ask somebody what motivates them, and they find that quite deep and meaningful.
Yeah.
But you ask them what doesn't motivate them, and all of a sudden that will unlock a whole host of different thoughts, because we know what we don't like, but how do we crystallize it on what we really do like?
Yes.
And I think that's why I quite often in these questions that, well, what motivates you? People kind of get stuck with that more, whereas when you flip it, they can really quickly articulate, well, I don't like this and I don't like that and I don't like the other. Yeah.
Which I think sometimes those things end up being almost, they can be a granular level. It can be task stuff, don't they? I don't like this, I don't like that. Then it builds a bit into a bigger list of, it's like, well, okay, having explored the stuff that you don't like, the stuff that doesn't motivate you, let's flip it a little bit then. Let's work out what it is. And the phrase I always use for this is, what is it that gets you out of bed in the morning? What is it that makes you want to do the things that you want to do day in, day out, and not get tired of doing it?
You know what? When you said that, my head immediately went to a 12-year-old that's got to go to school. But that's clearly not the answer that you're looking for. But
we have a 14-year-old that's the same, I guess.
Well, don't 14-year-olds not want to get out of bed?
Pretty much, yeah.
But I think, this podcast in particular, I think this one's really interesting, mainly because I know you've been through this. You've gone through this. I'm not sure I'm getting what I need, particularly when, we worked together in a former life.
Yeah.
And you had this real kind of, I'm going to call it an epiphany, but it might not be that. But you kind of went, we need to find some meaning in our life. And that was you and your wife, your lovely wife. So maybe play that through in terms of how you worked out what was really important to you and your wife.
Yeah, and it's a really, I guess, good observation on that. And I think there are several things at that time going on. So we were toying with, do we move house? We were toying with the idea of wanting to start a family. There was a lot going on for us, and I think this ties back to your earlier comment, Ricky, about this kind of the whole life piece, and where your work, your career is an aspect of that, but is a really big aspect of it. And the challenge I think that I went through and that we worked through together was almost this. I feel like I'm doing the best that I can at work, and I don't feel like I'm having the impact I want to have. And is there a different way of doing that? And I know you know it was more layered than that. There's a lot more going on than just that from the work point of view. But you get to that moment where you go, I need to do something different. And what's interesting, I reckon of the roles I've had, the jobs I've had, I've had that same internal conversation probably 3 times that's led me to move on, because I've got this. When I think about what motivates me and what's really important to me personally, it boils down to a really simple: I just want to help people, and what I want to feel like I'm doing is I'm working a roles in organisations where that kind of sense of purpose that I have is shared by the organisations, and and we know we have that in Thinking Focus. We know it's key to all of us in doing what we do, again, day in, day out, with the people that we work with. But I think having that and then sitting down, working through, so what does that mean? And suddenly you realise it's not just about the job that you're in; it's a much bigger thing, and you're looking at your job as part of who we are. You're looking at your family. You're looking at your relationship. And there are a few things out there that I think that really help with those kind of conversations. The one that I came across many years ago was something called the 5 balls. And it's been attributed to a couple of people, but one is James Patterson, the writer. And he talks about, it's in one of his books, he talks about, imagine you're juggling 5 balls, and I suspect in life we juggle a lot more than just 5. But he labels them. He labels them as, one of them's work. There's one of family. There's one of friends. There's one of health, and there's one that he calls spirit, which means different things for different people. And I think the wake up call for me, and the reason why I mentioned that one, is he talks about your work ball is a rubber ball. It will always bounce back. Your other 4 are glass balls. And if you drop them, if you chip them, if you damage them, sometimes you can't recover from that. And I think that was really helpful for me to go, the thing that I'm concentrating on the most right now, trying to find purpose in from a work point of view, is actually a much bigger part of a much bigger thing.
That's really interesting, because there's also, and imagine there's lots of derivatives about this
Yeah,
all over. As you said, there's also the wheel of life, which has 6 elements to it. But the principle essentially is, if you want to find your life purpose, is almost finding across, whether it's your 5 balls analogy, whether it's the wheel of life with 6 different elements in it, scoring where you are out of 10 right
yeah,
now. So which is the bit that, or which is the part of that wheel, or which ball is currently at risk?
yes.
And we love these 1 to 10 scales, don't we? So if you were
Oh, yeah,
if you were to evaluate it from 1 to 10 in each of your balls, then actually it becomes really easy to go, you know what, right now we do want to do all those things. We do want to move to the seaside. We do want to have a family, but actually right now our financial situation isn't strong enough to do that.
yeah, yeah,
So now you're into, how important is this to you really? Because is this about, actually I need to make more money, find more money, or cut our cloth in a different way that allows us to do those things? So what that 5 balls, or effectively gives you a set of choices and compromises that work out what's real and what's really important to you.
yeah. And we've done it, as you know, we've done it more than once. So we did it with kind of the change of career, and then when we were fortunate enough to fall pregnant with Evie Blossom, kind of when she came along, we had a whole different conversation around wanting from my wife's perspective, wanting to be around to spend as much time with newborn baby and small child as possible. And what was interesting at that time, the ball we looked at, the element we looked at was our finances, and kind of went, do we think we can, essentially get by on one salary? And so I think what you say there, Ricky, is about, then you start to make compromises, and you go, well, we can if, because suddenly there's this other aspect of our life that's more important than just going out and making money, which of course, you need to have enough money to kind of pay the bills and all that. But you kind of go, well, we'll make some sacrifices somewhere along the line then as well. So I think when we get into this conversation from a coaching point of view, this, the understanding the core purpose that somebody has, I think it always opens up into this much bigger conversation, and where are things for me right now, and which aspect of my life is it? And like I say, it's interesting. I think it typically comes from a I'm not happy at work type conversation, but in my experience, it nearly always touches on some of those more personal aspects as well.
And I think that's right. But there are other elements too. Is that you can see these crossing over. So you imagine your social life. Imagine you exist um, in a social circle that do lots of things. It's easy to get drawn into trying to keep up with the Joneses type message, where they're all, doing this, doing that, doing the other. And of course, you go, well, actually, that's a choice we can no longer make because our financial constraints are limited because we've chosen to have one of us stay at home and look after the newborn or the young child, whatever. And equally, sometimes we have these enforced on us when our health decides to tell us that enough's enough, you've pushed too far here. And that can often be triggered by burnout at work, for
Yes.
example.
Yeah.
So there is no hard and fast rules around this. The reality is they're like an intricate web. I like this glass balls analogy because actually you can't afford to drop some of it. Your health ball, you can't afford to drop it.
Yeah.
Yet we probably take that for granted. I know I do. The family stuff, I know I've taken that for granted over the years because I've prioritized career. Because my driver was always my job is to provide for my family.
Yes.
And that's even more important if we've made a choice like we did, very similar to you, that says, my wife is going to stay at home. Our wife, I know she's not yours as well, but my wife, we wanted her to be able to stay at home and look after Freddie. And we had another family situation. We'd had a bereavement. My wife had lost a mom. All of that changed the whole ecosystem
Yes.
of how
Yeah.
we juggled our particular balls. And that's a really powerful thing. So there is no right or wrong answer here. But I think this ability to score what's important and what's not, particularly using whether it's the 5 balls or the wheel of life, whichever tool we think is appropriate in the moment, particularly when we're coaching, all we're doing is asking you to prioritize what's important right now and recognize that doesn't have to last forever, by the way.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. And one of the groups that I work with on a regular basis, they're looking at, they're as a group, typically they're not in employment at the moment. You get the odd one who's changing career. And one of the things I encourage them to think about is working out what it is that you really want, because some people are there because they've been made redundant. Some people are there, it's a choice. They've left a job through a choice. And it's going, you've got almost this career break right now. If you sat down and worked out what it is that you really wanted, how might that change where you take your career? Because I know when I was made redundant many, many years ago, my first thought was, I'm a sales manager in financial services. Therefore, I need to apply for sales manager in financial services type jobs. I was defined at that moment by what I did and just looked for the same. When I took a step back, and I had some career coaching at the time, when I took a step back, what it enabled me to do was to go, no, I'm chasing the same thing that I was doing before because it's right now how I define myself. what the career coach encouraged me to do was to look at that deeper. What is it that motivates you? What is it that in the jobs that you've done? And they got you to do a real simple exercise about above the line, write down all the things you've enjoyed, below the line, all the things that you haven't. And what came through really clearly for me is it's about people. It's this fundamental, I just want to help people. That was what came through for me, which took me down a very different career path. So I think there is something when it's the purpose in life, the big question about purpose in life, it isn't about knowing what motivates you. And also that, working out what it is that doesn't motivate you, I think is a really good starting point. What is it that personally drives you, that gets you out of bed in the morning? For me, if we can answer that question, sometimes it does throw up the challenge. Essentially, we might be in the wrong job or the wrong organization. There is always that possibility, I think, when you're coaching somebody. But and as you say, Ricky, whatever it is, whatever tool it is that you use that helps to guide you. And the other thing for me is I still go back from time to time and do that 1 to 10 assessment and work out where my attention needs to be. Is it on the health one? Is it on the family one? Where might I not be spending the time that I could do right now?
Well, I think that's probably a really kind of good place to bring this to kind of a conclusion, really, which is, as you've just described, what motivates you, but actually think about it from the other perspective of what doesn't motivate you to help you crystallize that.
Yeah.
You've got to define what's really important right now and acknowledge that that doesn't have to be forever.
Yes.
But find that meaning in what you do will be more easier if you can look at it through the 5 balls, the wheel of life, whichever you choose as your weapon of choice. But fundamentally, be clear on what you want, be clear on why you want it, and that will help you to find your purpose.
Next time on The Question Is.
When the bad boss question comes up, I do think as a coach, sometimes you have to play devil's advocate and go, well, let's explore that for a second. A lot of the time, perception is a key player in this. And people sometimes label somebody as a bad boss when what they actually mean is they're a different management style. And I feel stressed or uncomfortable within that, so I'm going to blame the boss.
To find out how Thinking Focus can unlock the potential within your organization, go to www.thinkingfocus.com, where you'll discover more about the work we do, helping our clients increase productivity and enable change.